Welcome to this week's episode of the Pet Loss Journals, and I am your host, Louise. If you're new here, welcome. And I would encourage you to go back and listen to any of the other episodes, even the earlier ones, where I share my own personal journal entries about my pet loss experience. This podcast is now 2 years old, and I can't believe that it is 2 years old. So I have been thinking a lot about how this beautiful little podcast that was just an idea I had while washing my hair one day, how it's evolved over the 2 years, and how so many of the original episodes were of me sharing deep, personal, very private parts of my life, and I don't regret it for a second. And I think if I went back and listened to episode 1, I would actually cringe. But I was so nervous, and I think over the episodes, maybe you'll have heard as well, that I gained a little bit more comfort and confidence in recording each episode. And really, I've been evaluating things and wondering, where can I go next with the podcast? And recently, because I have been so honoured to be in the presence of such wonderful guests that have come on and shared their own unique pet loss journeys and experiences, I've been kind of sitting back listening in awe of them and how brave each of them were to share their story, to have the hope of connecting with you, the listener, and hopefully helping you and supporting you along your own journey, because each journey is different. But I've been listening and seeing how all of these guests are just so open and honest about how they're feeling. And I've been kind of thinking to myself, it's been a little while since I have been open and honest on a solo episode. I know a few episodes back I had been honest that, I was experiencing some loss in my life in the last year and a half or so, and that it was difficult. And I think that's good, but also reflecting on everything now, I would like to share a little bit more about myself with you, because obviously you've heard me say that this is the safest place I feel when it comes to being online as such. So recently I've been finding it very difficult to show up honestly and openly on Instagram stories, and putting my face on Instagram stories and being open. And that's mostly because of some of that personal issues I've been going through, and just I don't feel like I can actually just show up online with a smiley face if I'm not feeling it. So you'll only see me show up on Instagram stories when I'm being my true self and authentic self, and whether that's talking about a guest that's come on, or sharing about a podcast episode, or sharing about the book, or feedback that you all wonderful people have given me. So I think but generally talking like this, like I'm doing with you now, I find very difficult. So this is my safe space, and there's something that I wanted to touch on today, And the end of the episode is definitely going to be more pet loss related content, but in the next few minutes I wanted to touch on loss in general, and specifically loss that I've been dealing with for a number of years, that I think it's important to share, and how that's affected my life. So I think it may be relevant to you, it may connect with you, or it may not, but I really feel safe enough to share it here. And what I kind of want to share is, obviously, if you've listened from the beginning, you'll have heard that back in 2019, my 6-year romantic relationship ended. That was in September 2019. And then a month later, in October, both of my dogs died 24 hours apart. And I've always shared that on the podcast. I wrote about it in my book. And I have always kind of said I experienced 3 major losses in 2019, but that wasn't completely the honest truth, because I actually experienced 4 major losses in 2019. And what I'll share with you now is something I've never spoken about, and I think that I'd like to talk about it. I feel comfortable now to talk about it. So in July 2019, I decided, after many years of therapy, and I decided to end the relationship with my mother. So that, for me, that was cutting contact with my mother. It had always been, since late teens, a very toxic, turbulent relationship that my mother and I shared. And it did not improve over the years, and it was very painful for me to kind of navigate those years. And a lot of my 20s I spent in therapy. And I think now, for context, I'm just about, nearly in a few weeks' time, 38. And I spent many years, so the last 6 years, I have been estranged from my mother. And that was a loss that I didn't feel comfortable talking about or sharing in the earlier episodes of the podcast, or even in my book, because, and why? And I want to talk about the why. And I really feel that pet loss is the most unrecognised form of grief and form of loss. But also, equally, I really feel now, in recent months, that adult children that are estranged from their parents is equally as unrecognised, this form of grief and loss, because it is grief and it is loss. So having to go through 4 different loss experiences in 2019, looking back now in the 6 years, there were losses that I couldn't process for, months and years. And so it makes grief complicated for me, and it makes my relationship with loss very unnerving, very unsteady, and just unpredictable, and all of the things. And I really did a lot of grief work surrounding the relationship with my mother and being estranged from her. And hand on my heart, I can say that I've done a lot of healing around that, and a lot of grieving around that, because I was already grieving that relationship prior to July 2019, when I made that decision. So I had done several years of grieving for the relationship I wish I had with my mother. So why am I sharing this? I'm sharing this because I feel like it's a really important topic to talk about. And I know it's not related to pet loss, but it's still grief and it's still loss. And why I didn't want to share it or feel comfortable sharing it was the fear of judgment and shame. Feeling shame. And I've always had a weird relationship with the word shame. I don't know if you have too, but I've never quite understood it. It's always been scary. It's like, I really feel that shame is one of the most deep rooted feelings, emotions that any of us can have, and it's just shrouded in so much deep wounds. And I think the not good enough wound is probably attached a lot to my shame. And I don't know about you, if that makes you feel the same or if you resonate with that. But I felt that if I share this in my earliest podcasts, if I share this, will people have a perception of me, of being a certain type of person, of being cruel, of being unkind, of being harsh, of but now I've done the work and now I've seen the benefits of making that decision, which may be hard for some people to listen to, because a lot of people would have the opinion of your family are your family, they're your blood, they're your relatives. But the thing is, if you are being treated in a way that you don't deserve over a very extended period of time, e.g. years, this can really break your soul and break parts of you that you have to then spend years to put back together. And I've put parts of myself back together. I'm finally the person that I've always wanted to be. And I know that kind of sounds like cliche and kind of silly, but like, I was just a chronic people pleaser and managed my people's in my life, like my family's emotions, and I was often kind of the friend instead of the daughter. And without getting into a lot of detail, it was just, when I get to this stage of my life, I'm panicky now talking about this because it's like something I haven't shared before, but the couple of my best friends that I have in my life, which are incredible humans, they have been there for me through this estrangement and loss of family. And they've been wonderful. They've listened and they've held space for me. But I've just still felt very alone, as I haven't been able to connect or speak with anybody who's been through this or anything similar to this. So being estranged from a parent. And I really feel that that's been hard, and I think it's been a very lonely road. And to be honest, sharing this, some of you may agree and some of you may not agree, but at the end of the day, I guess if somebody else is sharing this with you about being estranged from their parent or going no contact from a family member, just please remember to think from the lens of, well, they must have had a really valid reason to make such a really difficult decision, and it's a horrendous decision to make and a difficult decision to make. instead of coming from the lens of, how could she do that? She must be a terrible person. She must be the problem in the relationship. She should just like sort it out, and she should, so believe me, I've been down all of the roads of trying to resolve things and repair before making a decision like that. But I think I just felt like talking about this subject, and I think it's important. I don't know, it's important to me, and there must be somebody else out there that has gone through this or is going through this. Of course, I follow a couple of people on Instagram that speak about this topic, which is great, but like finding a connection or talking to somebody in person or even virtually about this, I feel would help me the same way as maybe you sit down or you go for your walk or you get in your car and drive to work and listen to one of the episodes with one of my podcast guests, and you feel connected to that person because they've mentioned something that's very similar to how you've been feeling about the death of your pet, and you feel connected then, and you feel less alone, and you feel validated in your feelings. So I guess that's how I feel when looking for connection in regards to the loss of the relationship with my mum. And I think I've never really wanted to search for that before now. Like it's been 6 years, and like I guess in Ireland it's very taboo, and in Ireland we're very family orientated, traditional values. If there is like signs of family issues or dysfunctional family dynamics or whatever that is, it's often just brushed under the carpet. And I really feel that if you're the scapegoat in your family, or you're the black sheep, and you find your voice eventually after not having one through childhood, and you break the cycle, or you try to break the pattern, and you step out of that dynamic, and you want to walk into a more healthier path on life. And that's how I see it. And like how I see it is I'm protecting my peace, and I want to live a peaceful life, and I am like tapping into the happiness that I've always wanted to have in my life. And I think that's what it's all about. And a lot of this relates to pet loss, because like so many clients say to me that like once they experience the devastating loss of their pet that's been with them for however long in their life, the true colours of who they thought were their closest people get brought into the spotlight, and they begin to recognise who is really there for them and who isn't, and who will show up for them and offer even a scrap of emotional support, and who won't. And that often I say to clients are like added losses to the already horrendous, devastating loss of your pet. And like, it's not even fair to say that they're micro losses. They're additional losses, because so many people that I speak to say, I've decided to distance myself from that relationship, or walk away from that friendship or relationship with a family member, or whoever it is that they had an expectation that they would receive support from, but it didn't happen. And that can be really, really painful for so many people, and understandably so, because it's added loss on top of the already major loss that you have experienced. So multiple losses are just like, your brain cannot process them all at the one time. So it's like staggered grief, and it's like grief for this loss, grief. So in 2019, I didn't like know my arse from my elbow, so it was like 2020 was COVID and into 2021, and the grief just continued and just stayed in my body. And many of you will have remembered me sharing that I suffered with debilitating migraines, vestibular migraines, and which caused really bad vertigo and vomiting, nausea. And the first time I ever experienced an attack was in July 2019. The same time, like the same time period that I had decided to make that decision about the relationship with my mother. And that was the very first time that chronic illness showed its face, and it stayed with me for many years. And I still occasionally get a migraine, definitely not as frequently as a few years ago, thankfully. But there's just, like everybody is saying, like the body keeps the score, and that's like a fact of the matter, that trauma lives in the body. Grief manifests in different ways. It can come out and show its face through illness, mental health, difficulties, challenges, even like injuries, and just so many different ways. And it's just important to highlight that. So I don't really know, where I'm going with this, that I shared it with you, but I just really feel that listening to all of the guests recently, being so open and being so honest about their own journey, this was a topic that I've like held on to and buried down and hid away from all of you for 6 years. For 2 years since I started this podcast, but for 6 years for me personally. And like in the last year and a half, I've experienced more loss, and another family member, and it's when family members are still alive and then you're grieving them, it's the most unusual, like strange, conflicting, confusing feelings that arise in your body. It's just so painful, and it's valid grief. Like, it is a form of real grief, the same as pet loss grief is. And if anybody feels like sharing their experience, if they've experienced multiple losses, through their pet loss experience, or can relate to anything I've shared, great. And I just don't know what the benefit is of me sharing it, but I guess I wanted to share a part of me that's vulnerable, that was left unsaid, that I didn't share because of shame, which I should not feel ashamed about, and for fear of judgment, for fear of, being disliked. And I've let go of a lot of that mentality now, and I'm sharing it in case somebody else is in the same situation and feels alone, like I do. Like, I have support where I can talk to my friends, but being able to find somebody to talk to that's going through it or has been through it as well, it's very hard to find that. And I just wanted to share how I was feeling this week. And I'm a work in progress, and I'm human. I still have my own personal, turmoils that I go through in private, and I share some of it on here. And yeah, I think it's important to do that. I want to show up as me and be as authentic and transparent as I can. And being on this podcast with you and talking on these solo episodes is how I do it. But if you've gotten this far, which is quite far, thank you for listening. I did mention there's something that I wanted to share towards the end of the episode. And it's something that, like, I kind of just, to be honest with you, I'll just be honest, it just popped into my head today, this idea. And I wanted to share it and put it out there and wonder what you all would think about it. And I think for the next solo episode, I'd love to invite you, the listener, whether you're new, whether you are an OG, you've listened from the beginning, or whether you dip in and out whenever you need that bit of support. I really wanted to hear from you. So because I've been feeling very kind of disconnected from you, the listener, I guess, I've been feeling connected to the guests, but I want to feel more connected to the Pet Loss Journals listeners, wherever you are in the world and in whatever, point in your pet loss journey you are, whether it's at the beginning, the end, whether you're anticipating the death of your pet, whatever that may be. And I want to feel connected to you more and hear from you. So what I have decided to do is, in the show notes there will be a link for you to click on, and it'll bring you to a website where you can record me a voice message. It has a maximum time limit of 90 seconds. So you'll head on over to SpeakPipe, that's the website, and it will bring you to like a little website, a little web page with the Pet Loss Journals and a link to my website so you know it's legitimate and everything like that. And it'll give you an option to record me a voice message, which you can record anonymously. You can record with using just your first name if you'd like to share your first name, and if you don't want to share your name on the voice recording, that's okay too. And record me a message. So whether that's you want to ask me a question, whether you want to share something that's on your heart, whether that is you want to share a little bit of your story with everybody else, with me and with everybody else that will listen. If it's a question, I can offer you support by answering that question on the podcast episode. So I'm hoping to insert the voice message into the podcast episodes where it's just me, the solo episodes. Don't be nervous. Give it a go. I'd love to hear your voices too, and I'd love to share what you have to say with everybody else, because it's important, and I think connection is important. I really want to feel that connection to whoever listens to this podcast. I just pop it out into the world and it just floats out into the abyss of the internet, and I really want to feel more connected to many of you that are listening. And yeah, so if you feel guided, or if you have a gut feeling to go for it, then just go to the show notes underneath this episode and click on the link, which will bring you to SpeakPipe to record your voice message, which I will hopefully play on one of the podcast episodes. But yeah, I am excited about that. I really hope that one of you record a message, because if I'm like, oh, I'd really love you to record it, and then nobody, and I'm like, oh no. So one of you pluck up the courage and pop me in a voice message, because I know many of you listen from different parts of the world, and I would love to hear your voice. And if I can offer support, or if you want to share something that's on your heart, share. I would love to hear from you. So yeah, I would love to take that little small new direction for the solo episodes, and I think it would be beautiful for everybody involved to maybe even feel even more validation in how their journey is going with the loss of their pet. But I have babbled on for long enough, and I will end the episode here. If you have been listening for quite a while, please hit the follow button or subscribe button or leave a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen. It really, really helps to push this podcast out to the people who really need it. But even I feel that the universe will push the podcast to the people who need it, and they'll find it. It'll be in their path. But still, I would be so grateful to receive that feedback from you. But until next time, take care.